Welcome to another episode of It's a Long Beach Thing. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and like us on It's a Long Beach Thing on Facebook. We have a great Facebook group. You can promote anything you want as long as it's about Long Beach. We have a treat for you today. I am so excited to have the president of Long Beach City College, Go Vikings, Dr. Mike Munoz with us today. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful that you're here because I know how busy you are because I'm following you around Long Beach at the different events that we go to.
Yeah, I actually just got back last night from Sacramento. Myself and some of the board leadership spent the day in Sacramento meeting with our elected officials to advocate for the 25-26 budget cycle.
Oh, right on. It already starts, doesn't it? It never ends, right?
Correct.
So I know you have a great story. I've chatted with you a little bit about it in the past, but and I read a little bit about your bio, but I'm really, really excited to hear about it because I know it's really powerful. So let's start here. What's your first association with Long Beach?
So my first association with Long Beach was when I enrolled at Cal State Long Beach in 2002 and as a master's student in counseling. At the time I was pursuing my master's in school counseling. And so I actually not only attended Cal State Long Beach, but in my first semester, I had to do certain fieldwork hours as part of my degree program and credential as well. I was earning a pupil personnel services credential in school counseling along with my master's degree. And I did some field work observation hours at Jordan High School. So that was kind of my introduction to the Long Beach community.
Right on. But you grew up in Orange County. I believe you said you grew up in Anaheim, correct?
I did. I spent part of my early years as a child in Whittier, and then around fourth grade, my family moved to Anaheim, and I was there through high school.
Yeah, talk a little bit about your upbringing at Anaheim and how it was like, because I know you have a lot to talk about and it's very, very powerful.
Sure. So I, had a really, stable childhood in my years in Anaheim for most of my time. But as it got close to graduation, my family experienced some hardships. My dad lost his business and our home went into foreclosure due to some other conflicts. My dad had, unfortunately, when I was young, I was asked to leave the house when I was 17. And so from 17 on, I was pretty much on my own. I spent my last senior year in high school living at an aunt's house and kind of couch surfing with different friends, family. And then that experience, carried on when I started community college. My first semester out of high school, I attended East LA College. I had moved to my grandmother's house. And so I enrolled at ELAC. And unfortunately, like a lot of first generation college students who are struggling with housing insecurity, I was working a lot of hours. I ended up not really being successful in that first semester of college. And I realized, maybe I need to take a step back. College isn't for me. So I really wanted to focus on working. And so I took that step back. I worked for a couple years. And yeah, during that time working for a couple years, I became a dad and a single dad. And so that was life-changing for me. And so for a couple years of working full time and raising my daughter, I realized I needed to go back to school. And so I re-enrolled in community college and ended up at Fullerton College.
So you become a dad, you're working full time, and you realize that the work that you were doing was probably not going to suffice you raising a daughter. So you had the thought to go back to college because I really wanted to talk to you about that because I believe in your bio you said that you're the first person from your family to go to college. So I would imagine when you were growing up, college wasn't, or maybe it was. You'll tell me. Was college a main focus in your family growing up?
You know, it's complicated. I feel like, and so just to clarify, I'm first generation college. So one of my brothers did go to college. So I don't want to take that away from him, but my parents didn't graduate with a bachelor's degree. And so they were high school graduates. And so for me, I think when I think about that, there was always, my parents always told me like, go to school, do good in school. That wasn't, I think, a question. But in terms of how to go about doing that and what does that look like and how do you fill out an application How do you make sure you complete all the A through G requirements so that you can roll? Like they did not have that level of understanding or knowledge to guide me. So I wouldn't say that they didn't encourage me to go to school. I just don't think they knew how to support me on that path to go to school. And so that was really my lived experience, right? It was, they were focused on working and trying to help the family. And then especially, as I mentioned, as I got closer to being college age, my family went through that trauma of losing our home and my dad's business. And so that really impacted, my path even further.
So when you enrolled into Fullerton College, what was your thought process? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do outside of college at that time? Because I imagine it might have changed over the years.
And it's changed a lot. Like I'm somebody that's probably changed their major 5 or 6 times. Um, so, and I talk about that a lot. I talk about like people finding their career through happenstance. And we got to do better than just happenstance, right? When we think about career planning. But, for me, I was working at Kaiser Permanente and I was working at Kaiser as a medical receptionist. And so I thought, well, I'm working at Kaiser, I will just pursue a career in the healthcare field. And so when I showed up, I was initially thinking, well, maybe I'll be an RN, maybe it'll be a PA, maybe I'll be an X-ray tech, because I always say you kind of aspire to what you know. Because I was working at Kaiser, I was being exposed to these different positions. So I wasn't completely clear on where I wanted to work, but I thought, it just made sense to continue working at Kaiser. As I started to take some of the science courses, which tend to be the prerequisites for some of these courses, I didn't really enjoy that coursework. I didn't find myself excited about it. I started being drawn more to psychology and sociology and history. So then the question became with my counselor is like, well, what is going to feed my soul, right, in terms of work? And I realized what attracted me to healthcare wasn't necessarily like, I love the health sciences. It was that I wanted to help people. And so my counselor helped me clarify my values, because he was like, well, is it that you want to work in healthcare because you enjoy science or you enjoy blood and all of those things, right? Because I was going to do phlebotomy and all this stuff, and I was like, no, actually, kind of grosses me out, right? I don't like fluids. And he was like, okay, well, let's talk about your values. And so he did like a values clarification exercise with me, and what emerged as my guiding value was the desire to help others. And so then that became a conversation less about the medical profession or the health careers, and more about what careers support and align with being a helper. And teacher, counselor, all of those things started to emerge, and that's where my energy started being pulled towards.
And while you're going through this, I imagine you probably have to work full time because you're taking
Yeah.
care of your daughter.
Yep.
I don't know how many units you're taking, but I would imagine you're taking quite a bit of the school. How did you balance it? And who was watching your daughter when you were going to school and going to work?
It's a kind of a crazy story, I'm not gonna lie. During those days, looking back, I'm just like, how did I do it? It was very unconventional. When I was raising my daughter, going to school, I was working full time out of at Kaiser, and sometimes I even worked a second job while I was also going to school. So it was very, very challenging. I was able to build a good community of support. On weekends, my mom would help me. My mom lived in Pasadena. I was living in Orange County, so she wasn't like next door where I could just drop off my daughter. So there had to be coordination. If I needed a weekend to have some support, my mom would watch her on weekends. If I had a big homework assignment or paper due, I also had to build relationships with friends. And so working at Kaiser, I worked with a lot of single moms that had maybe earned their medical assistant certificate. And we kind of created what I call a babysitters club. And so they would watch my daughter with their kids so that they could, and then I would watch their kids with my daughter. And so we had this like community of support. And then one of the things I did when I transferred to UC Irvine, I was able to move into family housing. And I was at UC Irvine, and this is in the early 2000s. And I had met some friends that were at that my first quarter at UCI, and one of them was from the Coachella Valley, from Coachella, from Indio, that region. And they were really she was really struggling financially to be able to afford housing, and she was going to drop out of school because Irvine's very expensive. There isn't a lot of affordable housing options in Irvine. And so she was going to drop out of school and go back to Coachella. And I told her, I have a crazy idea. Now looking back at it, I was like, as my mom always says, "Estás loco." But back then I was like, I was just trying to survive. And I said, hey, you know, I only knew her maybe like 5 weeks. I said, I have a 2-bedroom apartment. I could put bunk beds in my daughter's room and you can move in and you can live with us in at UCI in our apartment. And part of your rent would be to help me take care of my daughter when I have to work late at night at Kaiser, when I have to stay up late and go to a study group or whatever. And so we agreed. And so she had kind of like this subsidized rent, for lack of a better term, and she moved in. She shared a room with my daughter. My daughter loved it. She had this, you know, cool college girl living with her and playing with her Teletubbies and Barbies with her. And she, you know, and she that became my sister's Thea, her, you know, auntie. She called her Auntie Denise all through, you know, the years we lived at UCI together. It helped her because she was able to continue her education without having to go home. And it helped me. Like I said, we're still good friends. She's married and lives in the Tucson area now in Arizona with her own children. But yeah, looking back, I was like, wow, I just knew someone 5 weeks and moved them into my daughter's room. I mean, how wild was that? But like, unfortunately, when you're at that stage in your life and you're just trying to survive and get by, like you do things sometimes that, you know, may sound to an outsider like, wow, that that's kind of crazy. But like in that moment, it made sense. Made sense for me, it made sense for her. I just thank God that it all kind of worked out okay. And she was, you know, a great influence in my life and my daughter's life.
Yeah. So when you're starting to go to UCI, I find that you're probably finding the flow of education. You're like, okay, I like this college thing because you know you go to you get your master's and your doctorate. So you had to start to feel that flow of education and starting to really dig it.
I did. You know, I always say UCI changed my life because, you know, prior to that, my life was, there was a lot of instability. And, you know, and that's why I'm such an advocate for affordable student housing options for our students. Because if you have unstable housing, it's really hard to find academic success and just the kind of life success of where you reach your goals and aspirations in terms of your education, career, and just the type of human you want to be. And so I think that for me, having that stable housing, you know, I know I'm dating myself, but this is really cheesy. But they had, you know, back at the prior to that, I had dial-up where with internet where you'd have to plug like your phone jack into your phone jack, and you would hear this horrible noise. It sounded like we're killing a cat. You know, when every time you log on a AOL. And they had DSL, which was like a thicker cable, was like an Ethernet that you plugged in. So it was still not wireless, but it was much faster speeds than dialing it, you know, logging in through your phone. And it was free. And so I remember moving into UCI, I was like, I have internet and it's free. And that like blew my mind, right? Because that made it so much easier for me to study and do my research. I didn't have to leave my house to go to the library and go through the Dewey Decimal System. I'm really dating myself, right? Like go to the card stacks and pull out things and pull out books and then Xerox copy them. And, you know, and so the internet was like, that was a game changer. And I was like, wow, I got the internet. And where all my friends were still on that slow dial up that you plugged into your phone jack, I had the Ethernet. And I thought it was.
So when you're going to UCI, was it still an emphasis of counseling, or did you change it up at that time?
Let me tell you, counseling didn't come till a little bit later. So I was kind of in between two major career fields. Um, I wanted history. I was thinking about being a history teacher. And then I switched to psychology. And so I ended up at psychology and social behavior at UC Irvine. Um, and I was also taking a lot of criminal. So at UC Irvine, they have a school called the School of Social Ecology. So I didn't do the social sciences psychology. I did the social ecology psychology, which is psychology and social behavior. And they also had something called criminology, law, and society. And so I was taking a lot of pre-law courses. And I did all the coursework to have a minor in criminology, law, and society. So I was really for a while there being like, I'm gonna be an attorney. You know, I love watching Law and Order, and I love to argue. If anybody knows me, I can be pretty persuasive when I need to be. And so I was thinking I'm gonna be an attorney. So I started doing some research and some field work. And what I discovered is that my personality didn't fit in a law firm because it's very business and kind of quiet and keep your head down and it's a lot of research. And I want to talk to everybody and I want to engage with everybody. And so it just didn't make sense for me. And so I remember sitting there contemplating, okay, like, well, if law is not for me, what is? And then I thought about it and I was like, what do you want for your life? And what came back as I asked myself that question is, I want to do what my counselor Rolando did for me at Fullerton. He saw the whole student. He wasn't transactional in his interactions with me. He didn't just give me an ed plan. And I always say this, as a counselor, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go through the crates and unpack all my trauma with you, but I've definitely had a very traumatic set of experiences happen to me through childhood and through early adulthood. And so, I always say he didn't, wave a magic wand and just miraculously fix my life. Like my life was very complicated. But what he did do is he held up a lantern for me and he illuminated a path out of some very challenging circumstances. And he illuminated a path for me. And I thought, I want to do that for others. And so I asked him, I went back and I met with him while I was at UCI. And I said, what do I have to do to become you? And he kind of chuckled and he said, well, you're going to get a master's degree in counseling. And at that time, I barely was able to get to the bachelor. So I was like, oh, no. Masters, this is too much. That's too much. Like, I just want to work. I need to make money. And he was like, but if you want to be a counselor, you got to have a master's degree. So he told me, you're going to do a master's degree. Don't do it at a private school because I was looking at USC and it was going to cost some crazy amount. So he was like, go to Cal State Long Beach. They have the best master's in counseling program in the region, most respected. Go to that program. So I applied to a program that typically gets over 200 applicants a year and they select 20. I was interviewed and I got in. And that, meant to me, that was like, yeah, I'm going to get my master's. And so I kind of did what he said. And that's what opened up the door for me to become a counselor.
Mm, mm. And then not only that, you got your master's and you're like, well, let's keep the ball rolling. Let's get my doctorate.
That was a trip. So let me tell you, I never thought I would get a doctorate, but I started working as a high school counselor in the Santa Ana Unified School District, or if you're from Santa Ana, they call it Santana. So that's how you know not from Santa Ana, or if you're from Santa Ana, is if you call it Santana. So as the young kids called it, I worked in Santana Unified and I was at Saddleback High School. And I loved being a counselor. It was an amazing job. I also worked at Santa Ana College as part-time as a transfer center counselor. So I would work 7:30 to 3:30 at Saddleback High School. And then I would start a 4 to 7 p.m. shift at Santa Ana College in the transfer center. So I was, like I said, I'm the kind of guy that's pretty much always had 2 jobs all their life. And even as president of Long Beach City College, I still have 2 jobs because I've been teaching for 10 years at USC. So I've never not had 2 jobs since I was probably 17. I'm just kind of wired that way at this point. And so, when I was in Santa Ana Unified, I loved the job, but I was very frustrated by the system. An educational system and structures that was really not responsive to vulnerable student populations, marginalized students. And so I just was like, okay, I had to make a choice. I was like, I could be a counselor the rest of my life and have tremendous impact individually on the students who I serve. Or I can move into leadership roles that still have impact and individual impact, but that really focus my time, energy, effort, skills, and talents on systems and structures and leadership. And so at that time where I was really contemplating this big life decision, because truth be told, in Santa Ana Unified, I had gotten an Educator of the Year award. And so they were really pushing me to be that high school admin route, like being assistant principal and then a high school principal and then maybe even higher. And I remember Cal State Long Beach launched their first EDD cohort. This is 2007. It was a big deal because the Cal States were not allowed to offer doctorate programs before, only the UCs. And so they had released this big press release that, Cal State Long Beach is going to launch a doctorate in education. And I went there. So, I was comfortable with the institution. I knew the faculty that were going to be teaching. I was like, maybe this is my shot. I'm going to apply. And I applied to the program and I got admitted to the first EDD cohort at Cal State Long Beach, along with our very own Congressman, Robert Garcia. We both did our doctoral programs together. And that's how I ended up essentially deciding to pursue my doctorate.
Mm. So you get your doctorate. At this point in time, were you thinking, okay, you know what? I want to run a college. That's what I want to do. I want to be a president of a college.
No, that came later. So let me tell you how that all went down. So mind you, I start my doctoral program and I decided I was working in a high school, mind you. So I wasn't even at a community college. But I had worked as an adjunct faculty member in a community college. So essentially what took place was a school called Rio Hondo, which is another community college in the city of Whittier, had opened up a position for a director of Gear Up. And Gear Up is a federally funded grant that works with cohorts of high school students to prepare them for higher education. And they, in the job announcement, it said, we want a director who has both high school and community college counseling experience. And the vice president, who was the hiring administrator for that grant program, was my former dean at Santa Ana College. So he was the dean of student affairs and I had worked for him previously. So I knew him and he was a great leader and I knew he's someone I would want to work for because I had worked with him before. And so I said, you know what? And at this point, I'm maybe about 30 years old, 31, I don't remember exactly, but I was still kind of youngish. And I was 30, 31 that looked like I was 17. Like I was somebody that always looked really young. And so I was like, I'm gonna throw my name in the, in the ring and to see what happens. And so I remember going to the interview and it freaked me out. There was like 17 people in the room because when you interview for community colleges, it's a very big process. Mm. And I was like, 17 people, I never, like, that was just nuts to me. And in fact, my voice was trembling in the beginning. So they're like, can you please speak up? We can't hear you down here, like that with this big long conference table. It was just totally intimidating and overwhelming. But I got invited for a final interview. And again, same thing. I was thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna, and I think because I had no expectations of getting the job, that I was just like, I'm fearless. I'm just gonna do me and I'm just gonna show up and I just want I'm here. Like I was the guy that literally is like, I'm here for the experience. Not because I actually want the job. And so, I interviewed second level with the president. And then like the next day I got the call and they're like, we want to offer you the position. And I was like, what? And that was a big deal financially for me because that was a six-figure salary job. And you're talking 2007. So to be 30 years old, being offered a six-figure salary job back in 07 in the middle of the Great Recession on top of that, right?
Yeah.
Talk about changing the trajectory of my life and my family's life. So, and then to get paid to do work that you're so passionate about too. So I was like, okay, you can't say no, but I'm scared, you know what, Liz? Yeah. And I was like, I remember thinking about it, told my daughter, because it would require us to move from Santa Ana to, to Whittier or closer to the college. Because as a single dad, there was no way that I could do that commute and still be a dad. So like we would have to move. And I thought about it and I was like, we're going to do this. This is where the universe is taking me. I'm a big believer of like being open. And I talk about this with students a lot. Like I read this article many years ago about luck. And it was the science behind luck. So it was looking at luck through like an empirical lens, a research lens. And what really emerged is it's not necessarily that people are lucky. It's that oftentimes it comes down to your degree of openness. People who are open to the opportunities that luck bring find luck. Those that have closed personalities and are less likely to take risks, less likely to be open to different kinds of experiences, they're less likely to find luck. And so I remember that, and that stood out to me, that article that I read back from my psychology major days. It stuck with me and I was like, okay, I'm going to be open because that's what the science says is people who are open and take risks find luck. So I'm going to do this. And I took the risk and I went to Rio Hondo and I was there for 11 years and I got promoted 4 times. I went from director to associate dean to executive dean before I came to Long Beach City College as vice president of student services.
So when you were going through the ranks at Rio Hondo, I would imagine at this point, like you mentioned earlier, the opportunities are what's around you. And now the opportunities around you is running a college, correct? Was that a thought in your head at that point then?
Yeah, so the real pivotal moment for me, because I still, we talk about things like imposter syndrome or self-doubt. I still didn't necessarily see myself as presidential. It was until my president, Dr. Ted Martinez at Rio Hondo, he came and knocked on my door. And at this time, my office was in some like portables in the back of the institution because I was doing high school programming, so nobody really saw me as like a real college administrator. It was just, oh, that's that nice guy that runs the high school programs.
Mm.
And he stepped into my office and he handed me a pamphlet, and it said the National Community College Hispanic Council Mid-Managers Fellowship. And he said, I want to sponsor you to go to this fellowship that helps build a pipeline for Latino college presidents. And I looked at him and I was like, me? And he was like, yeah, you. And I was like, and then at first I was like, no, no, no. He's like, and we're gonna pay for it. I was like, okay. And I saw
Sold.
because I saw $5,000 on the pamphlet. So I was like, I ain't paying no $5,000. I don't got that kind of cash. And he was like, and the college is gonna sponsor it. And so he sponsored my fellowship. And that changed my life because then all of a sudden I was thrusted into this program where I'm sitting down with college presidents from across the country, talking about leadership development, talking about career planning, talking about the competencies that you need, communication, storytelling, to fiscal, to HR, to legal, to fundraising, to board management, all of the competencies that they were addressing. And so all of a sudden, like I started to change the way I viewed myself. And if I can be vulnerable with you, Paul, and I say these things because I feel like all of us experience different levels of self-doubt in our life. And it doesn't matter what your race or your ethnicity or your background. I think it's a human experience, right? To experience self-doubt at different moments in your life. I think I always picture myself as I could probably get to vice president of student services because people expect the vice president of student services to be a champion for students. But once you get to president, you got to be a little bit more business oriented.
Mhm.
I didn't see myself in that light. And so I kind of limited my thinking for many years and be like, I'll be an executive, but I don't know if I'm gonna be a president because I have to give up too much of how I want to show up in the world for a role like that because I didn't have a lot of presidential role models that weren't kind of, just to be honest with you, mostly transactional, mostly business oriented, very detached from students and students' needs. And so I didn't have a lot of role models. And so I didn't see myself wanting that job. And then I just doubted that, like, if I would belong in a job like that, someone that looked like me, that's someone that talked like me, that's someone that prioritized students in the way I do, like, that's not for me. And that limiting thinking, I think, really permeated for a lot of years. And it wasn't until I got into I got to Long Beach City College, a place where I really felt like I belonged for the first time in my career.
What role did you have when you first came to Long Beach City College?
Vice president of student services. So I
Okay.
started in 2018 as the vice president of student services. And, as you know, Long Beach is a special place. It is one of the most beautiful communities I have ever experienced in my life in terms of making people feel like they belong and they matter. And I felt like I was able to let down some of my guard. Because we all wear different masks, social masks, as we move through this earth, and we've learned, right, how to hide parts of ourselves that we don't always feel like we can be fully ourselves in certain spaces. And yes, you always have to have a certain level of professional standard and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about being able to just be your authentic self. And Long Beach is one of those communities that give people that space. I really felt, embraced by this community. And then I really reshaped the way I saw myself. And, yeah, maybe I am presidential, and maybe someone that looks like me and talks like me that wants to prioritize student needs can lead an institution as big and as prestigious as Long Beach City College.
So then was there an opening for the position and you put your hat in the ring?
So it's a little bit of complex. So we actually, in the middle of at the start of the pandemic, my former president, who actually hired me, she ended up leaving the institution. And so we had an interim president for about a year. But because it was the middle of the pandemic, it was very difficult for the board to go immediately into a presidential search. So after she served 1 year term as the interim president, she decided not to continue in that role. And so therefore we needed another interim. We were about to go right into accreditation. And so we couldn't just bring someone, I think, from the outside in. And so the board tapped me to serve as the interim superintendent president. In fact, it was March 4th, 2021. So I'm about to hit my 4 year mark that I was asked to step into that role. I said yes because I knew my institution that I love needed me. And I stepped in, not necessarily knowing if I wanted the permanent job, right? Because it's the middle of pandemic and there's a lot of complexities in these roles. But it turned out to be a really good fit. I was able to quickly build a really strong, meaningful relationship with our board of trustees, which is important to guide them and support them as we move through accreditation and reopening the campus from COVID and support priorities of student housing and other really important initiatives for the board. And then was also able to find success leading the campus and getting the constituency groups to support me. So I ended up applying for the permanent position. And then January 1st, 2022, I started as the permanent president of Long Beach City College.
Did you feel, because been doing it for at least a year and going into 2022, did you feel real comfortable about, putting your hat in the ring for the permanent role at that point then?
I did. For me, I was just like, I want this job. Like
Mhm,
this is after sitting in the seat for several months, I realized that this was my strength. You know,
mhm,
again, I go back to self-doubt. Sometimes you think, you know, am I ready? When you think about taking that next career step, right? You ask
mhm.
yourself, am I ready? Yeah, I was successful here, but does that translate to a different setting? Is this a fluke? And so I was able to kind of in a low risk format. And when I say low risk, not low risk for the institution, but low risk professionally, right? Like if I had not, I was interim. So if I had not gotten the permanent position, I was able to go back to my vice president position, right? So that's what I mean when I say low risk. I was in a low risk way able to test the role. And I'm sure the board probably also was able to test me.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and so I think it really opened up my eyes that, yeah, you're an effective leader and you're good at what you do and you care deeply about people and you're good at bringing people together. And that's, what made me really feel compelled to apply for the permanent position.
With you going through and getting the campus open, something that no other president of our generation and the generations before had ever had to do, you had to do. I mean, there had to have been times where you're like, "Oh my goodness gracious, am I up to this task? I mean, this is crazy."
Yeah, yeah, no, that is a real feeling that I think many leaders have to, experience. The truth is, there was so many moving parts. And, whether it was the vaccine mandate that divided certain groups and, or if it was, what is the right percentage of classes that we should offer online versus in person? Do you continue having people wear masks and not wear masks? I mean, it was just a very challenging time. But I think what my goal was to always center decisions about what we believe is best for students, as well as being transparent about the decision and the reason why. I have found that vast majority of people, when you are transparent, when you communicate, when you provide rationale, when you also provide space for people to dissent and provide alternative perspectives, that typically creates the conditions for very challenging decisions to be implemented with the least amount of disruption.
Mhm.
Um, yes, there were people that still weren't pleased with decisions that we made, but for the most part, I think the campus really understood where we were coming from as a leadership team and vastly supported the decisions that we were making at that time.
Coming out of the pandemic, was there a transition? Because I'm sure a lot of the subject matter was online, and I would imagine, when things started to open up a little bit, I imagine your plan was changing too on bringing more stuff back to campus. Talk a little bit about that transition.
Sure. So, I think when I think back on reopening the campus, a lot of it was to find ways to make people feel like they belong again. I think all of us were coming out of COVID and like coming out of a fog. We were isolated, separated. So it was kind of like we have to relearn how to re-socialize with people. And so, I remember there was a couple things that we did early on that I thought were really cool. I don't know if you know Randy Tutor. He's my dean of
Oh yeah.
kinesiology. He's one of my favorite people here at LBCC. He came up to me. He's a big ideas guy, right? So he's like, Mike, I got this great idea. And I'm like, okay, Randy, how much is it going to cost me? I'm thinking about it. And he's like, esports. And I'm like, you know, I don't play video games, so I have no idea. He's like, my son loves esports, and it's like the biggest thing with young people right now. We need an esports team. Let's start an esports team. And I wasn't fully convinced, but Randy has great ideas. And I think that's what good leaders do is they empower people who have talent and ideas to run with those ideas. And so I said, okay, make me a proposal. So he came back and he's like, here's the proposal. Let's do esports. I'll tell you why. And we're going to start with a esports watch party. So we formed our team. First, they went head to head against Dominguez Hills, which was like the state champion for esports. And so we opened up the kinesiology lab and aquatic center, multi-purpose room. And it's beautiful. It's where we have the board of governors meetings. So that's this, you see the pool, the soccer field, and this huge screen. And I show up at like 6 o'clock, and all of a sudden there's like, I can't even tell you, it was like, like 70 students. I have never, when we reopened the campus, you would get maybe 5 students at a student event. And it was like, nobody was showing up. And I remember this watch party, I walked in and I was like, oh my God, I have not been in a room with this many people in 3 years. Right. And people had different comfort levels at that time. But people were wearing masks and we were being respectful. But I mean, it was really great to see that many students engaged. And I'm not going to tell you the other part that kind of freaked me out. I didn't realize how graphic and violent these video games are. So I'm thinking, when I heard esports, I'm thinking like when I was a kid, I used to play Mike Tyson Punch Out on Nintendo.
Yeah.
Or like Joe Madden football. Like this is what I was thinking when they say esports. Nah, this stuff was like super out of my comfort zone. Let's just say that. And and not to generalize and say girls don't play with video games because I'm not, wanting to generalize in that way. But having a daughter who wasn't into video games, I just was not exposed to any of this content until that night. And I remember I was like looked around because I was having a panic attack. I was like, oh my gosh, this is super violent. What is going on? And I look at Randy and he's laughing and look around and all the students are like laughing and cheering. And I'm like, okay, why am I the only one that's freaking out right now? And then they told me, oh, this is normal. Okay, I guess.
And then you just build that program for, I'm sure that program's
It's really, I mean, we actually, in the new M building have an esports suite. So we're having a ribbon cutting, I think either next week or the following week. You should come and check it out.
absolutely. What's the date on that?
If you don't mind connecting my assistant Lauren and she'll send you the
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to have it up for the podcast, but okay.
You know what? And let me see if I can get it before we end.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. So you do the EA Sports, but I mean, but let's talk about the remodeling that you did. You guys got a huge. Is it called a grant? Is it a grant? Is that
So we got a bond.
a bond? Bond. You got a bond.
Last November, we passed a $990 million bond to be able to continue to build out Long Beach City College as the premier 21st century educational facility.
I gotta tell you, I went to Long Beach City College because we're about the same age. So I went to Long Beach City College around 2000, 2001, around that time. And let me tell you, Long Beach City College probably. I wasn't a great student in high school at all. I was told that I would never be able to go to college, and I reluctantly went to Long Beach City College because I was like, well, my friends are going to Long Beach City College. Let me go to Long Beach City College. And when I came on campus, I got to tell you, the faculty was so welcoming and so gracious. I was like, wow, this is crazy to me. I've never felt this way before. I thought, it was teachers that just give you a grade and then that was it, and you went on your way. But I felt like the faculty liked you as a human being and wanted you to do well, not only in your academics but in life. There was a different energy, and I started going to school, going, man, I really like I really like Long Beach City College, and because of Long Beach City College, I transferred to a four-year university. I don't think I would have done it if it wasn't for Long Beach City College. So I wanted to say that, but going on that campus at that time, it wasn't a bad campus. I'm not saying it wasn't at all. But I go
Sure.
on this campus now, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this doesn't feel like a junior college. This feels like I'm at a Cal State University.
Definitely, it definitely does. We've really been responsible and good stewards of Measure M and Measure LB and now Measure AC. The Long Beach community and voters really have put their trust in Long Beach City College, and I think we really delivered on the facilities. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as superintendent president, I've been very committed to ensuring that our facilities are open to the community. One of the things that I did when I became superintendent president is I work with our CBO, our chief business officer, to revamp our process for events on campus. And so, anytime you step on this campus, you will see if our students aren't using it, the community is using our soccer fields, our volleyball courts, our pool. Community groups and organizations are using our classrooms. We've brought a flea market to our trades, technology, and community learning campus, formerly PCC. We've had tamale festivals, Cambodian festivals, all sorts of festivals on campus. The Best of Long Beach, we've really tried to open up the campus to the community so that they know that this belongs to them.
And I love the fact that when I was a kid, the trades were really big, and then for some way, it became kind of a stigma about the trades. And I love that Long Beach City College is bringing the trades back because the trades is phenomenal. Because you can make a great career out of the trades, and it's a labor of love. I know a lot of people in the trades that are thriving, that they own their own business, they're entrepreneurs, and they love what they do every single day because of the trades. And I'm loving it that Long Beach City College on the PCC campus has brought it back, because I feel that more and more students are going to go in the trades and they're going to thrive.
I agree. I agree. And as someone that is going through some major home renovations right now, that I am so helpless and can't do anything for myself. And I'm on Thumbtack twice a week. I really wish like I would have learned a trade. So I think apart from economic mobility, just life skills, right? And
Mhm.
being able to know, I'm a little bit of a, if I can be vulnerable with you, I'm a little bit of a dystopia kind of TV movie genre kind of person. So I love like end of the world stuff. And I think to myself, I would be so useless if there was some apocalyptic whatever and you had to fight for survival and you're like The Walking Dead or The Last of Us. I'm like, I can't ride a horse, I can't even nail a nail straight. Like I'm like, what am I gonna like, what are they gonna want? Like I might be able to say like maybe I could be the community therapist. I don't know. But like, I mean, it's like, so sometimes when I watch these dystopian shows that I get all addicted to, I'm like, yeah, you ain't about that life. I do have the date for you.
Oh yeah, what's the date?
It's February 27th at 10:30 a.m. in the M building. So
Awesome.
please join us. I would love for you to see what we're doing there. It's really special.
I'm there. I'm there for sure. So what's the vision for Long Beach City College, and what's the vision for Dr. Mike going forward?
So let's start with LBCC because that's what matters. I think we are a college going through tremendous transformation, not just transformation of our physical buildings and setting, but how we support and work with our students. As you know, a couple years ago, we launched our Belong Beach City College campaign, and where we really focused on mattering and belonging. When I first stepped into my role as president, only 49% of our students who were surveyed through a climate survey said they felt like they mattered or belonged. This past fall, we increased that to 92%. And I'm
Wow.
tremendously proud of that. Um, and really, again, that's through thinking about what it means to create a culture of care for our students, respond to their needs, affirm their identities and lived experiences. And so what's next? You know, we're building student housing. We're on the cusp of hopefully this summer, being able to break ground on a 420 bed complex. So that's going to be huge for Long Beach City College. That's going to completely change our identity because most community colleges aren't residential.
Mhm.
So that now we're going to become a 24-hour institution. So that's huge. We really, you know, and I really want to credit our board of trustees. You know, everyone always says, you know, boards are this and that. Let me tell you, our board of trustees collectively share the value of students and putting students first. And they have been champions like no other in the space of housing and students with housing insecurity. And so to prioritize our bond in this way to build affordable student housing is going to be transformational. And so, you know, our academic outcomes, we're seeing increases in most of our academic indicators. So we're really proud of that. And the other big one I'm really proud of is our enrollment. We have the largest enrollment class in the history of Long Beach City College this year, over 38,000 students enrolled. And
Wow.
yeah, and we regained what's called large college status, which is any community college that has more than 20,000 full-time equivalent students. And so we're one of the few colleges that have exceeded pre-COVID enrollments. We've regained large college status. We've increased, like I said, our student outcomes. So, you know, we're really thriving. And I think that it's because of the work that we're doing around mattering and belonging. Really, I do.
Amazing. And what about the vision of Dr. Mike personally? What does the vision look like for Dr. Mike?
So the vision for me personally, you know, if I could be vulnerable with you, Paul, I'm living my best life right now.
Mm.
And there's some tension points with that because we know that there is a lot of suffering happening in the world right now, globally, as a nation. So there's a little bit of internal turmoil because I'm experiencing so much joy and success personally to be able to serve in this role as superintendent president of this amazing institution and to create the kind of impact individually and generational impact that I'm going to make on people's lives. It's a once in a lifetime kind of professional opportunity. At the same time, I look around what's happening across the world and I'm just like, wow. So I'm trying to make sense of that. And so where I choose to put my energy and joy is helping others. That's going back to that core value, whether that's volunteering in a refugee center at the border or spending time with my daughter and just really connecting with her beyond a kind of a superficial, shallow, like, how's it going? You know, but like really talk to me, like, tell me what's going on with you and doing these really important dad and daughter check-ins. I think that's where my energy is at. And my goal is to continue to serve Long Beach City College until I retire, hopefully. You know, I full stop transparency. 2037 is the year that hopefully I would retire.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and so I would love to continue to serve this institution till then because it's a magical place. You know, I just bought a home in Cal Heights. And so I'm really loving the Cal Heights neighborhood. It's a walkable neighborhood. I love walking to my favorite spots to eat in my neighborhood and, you know, spend time with friends. And it's life is good right now. So I'm gonna say my energy is really thinking about what my legacy will be in terms of impact at Long Beach City College over the next 13 to 15 years till retirement. Because, you know, like you said, we get to an age where we're just building, climbing. And I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
Be present, be thankful, be of service. That's
Enjoy
what
the
I'm.
moment, right?
Yep.
I love this question because I think you would give a good answer on this. What advice would you give a young Mike as a young father going into Fullerton College for the first time? What advice would you give that person?
Be more gentle with yourself. I think when I was young, like many young people, we judge ourselves harshly. And there's a Maya Angelou quote that I live by, and it says, do your best until you know better. And when you know better, do better.
Hmm.
And my young self, I didn't know a lot. and I made a lot of mistakes, and I judged myself harshly for those things. We call ourselves dumb, that inner voice, or you're stupid, or you should have known, but and then it's that murk, right, that lives with us when we judge ourselves so harshly. It gets in our way of being able to really find success. And so I think I would tell myself, be gentler with yourself. It's okay. You didn't have to have all the answers in that moment. But it's about that upward momentum, right? And staying the path. And when you feel those moments where it's easier to fall back than press forward, press forward. That's what I would tell myself.
That's fantastic. Press forward. I love that. Before I let you go, I always like to end it with a fun question. And now
Yeah.
that you're in Cal Heights and you're Long Beach City College, I know you're all over the city. Where are some of your favorite places to eat?
Okay. So I'm gonna start with a non-Cal Heights one first because it's my old neighborhood and we still drive from Cal Heights to it. I love Starling Diner. That place is my jam. It's my comfort food. I love their breakfast bruschetta, their chicken sausage scramble. It brings me joy every time we eat at Starling Diner. So number one spot, Starling Diner. I'm a breakfast guy on weekends, so that really brings me a lot of joy. I also love Lola's. We used to go to the one on 4th Street. My favorite one is Atlantic because it's much closer. It's in Bixby Knolls. But Lola is just some good hearty food. And I love Lewis and everything that Lewis and Brenda do and for the community. And so I just love being there and supporting. I love Pancha. That place is really good too. And I will
That's on
say,
Broadway?
yes.
Okay.
And it's a New Mexican cuisine. And I love it. If you haven't, you need to get their green chili cornbread. It comes out in a skillet with some honey butter. It is amazing. And then probably my last one that I really love, because I love me some Mexican food, is I gotta keep it classic. I just like me some Super Mex. They come with tostada shells and their fajitas are super yummy. So I would say those are like my top. If I have to go, to a more upscale, if it's like a certain business meeting, I love 908. Their pistachio crusted halibut is some of the best food I've had in the city. So I just think, there's so many great food treasures here in Long Beach.
You're the first person to mention Sterling Diner. I know where it's at, but I've never gone there, and now I'm gonna have to go there.
Okay, promise me. It's on 3rd Street. You got to get yourself a couple things and take someone with you so you can kind of do family style.
Okay.
For the breakfast bruschetta.
Okay.
Make sure you try some of that San Francisco French toast. Amazing. I like the one that's kind of soaked in brandy and some, I think it's peaches, but it's so good. And then I love their skillets. The chicken sausage is my favorite, but they have other ones as well.
Okay, 3rd Street. So it's in the downtown area then.
Belmont Heights.
It's
So it's
Belmont Heights.
So it's 3rd, I want to say, like, if I think correctly, like around 3rd and Terminal.
Oh, it's by my house. I
Yeah,
could walk there.
on 3rd Street. So, but you'll be able to find, but it's amazing. What's his name? Guy Fieri. You'll see his big signature on the wall because when he does his diners, and I forget the name of his show, but he did an episode there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm going there now.
excellent.
Is there any last words you want to leave our audience with?
I just want to say, please, everyone who's watching, know that Long Beach City College is your city college, and we're here for you, whether it's to take a class for enrichment or to help you upskill for a new job or to transfer to university and earn that bachelor's degree that maybe you always secretly wanted to, but life got in the way. You belong at Long Beach City College, and I will do anything I can to support you on your path. Students will reach out to me directly through social media and say, hey, I need help, and I'll make sure we connect you with the right folks. So just know you have a whole community of support waiting for you at Long Beach City College.
Fantastic. Dr. Mike, I feel like, it's fun doing these podcasts because I feel like even if we did coffee, I don't feel like I would have got this much information if I did it that way as opposed to a podcast. So I'm so grateful again that you spent the time to come on here. And I learned a lot, my friend. I really did.
Thank you. And, I appreciate you, Paul. Like when I see you out in the community, you're a source of light. You bring light into every room you step into. And that's why I was really motivated to do this, because I love my energy to sync up with someone's energy like yours as well. Because I think that's when we amplify our lights together, right? And that's how we spread light to others. So thank you for reaching out and including me.
We brighten the light for everybody, right?
That's right.
Well, it's been a Long Beach thing.